Hello and welcome to the first presentation of the day for this absolutely fantastic event. This is going to be a first for me, and I'm sure it's going to be a first for many people doing this. You're normally used to talking in front of a room full of people, so this is going to be slightly different. Please do leave comments for me. This is a very, very interactive presentation. I welcome any comments. I welcome any feedback on what I'm saying, so please let me know. It will help me kind of know how you're gauging this presentation because I can't see you. So leave comments, please. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're watching in the world. As you can see from the title and from the adverts, today I'm going to be talking about quite a controversial topic, and that's the entertainment industry versus what I've called the research industry, and that is it's quite a vague title there, but you'll get to see what I mean as we go on. And then the second part of the presentation is going to be talking about modern technology and whether that's a good or bad thing for the investigative field. I guess we'll crack on. I know people will be kind of tuning in as I go. Hopefully you can all see my presentation. I've tried to split it so you can just see me, but mainly see my slides of the presentation. So again, any feedback if you can't see it or if you can't hear me very well, please do let me know. So we'll crack on. So the first part really, I just want to talk about a theory of spirits and what they are. So I came into this really from a UFO background and a conspiracy background really. I always had an interest in the paranormal in terms of ghosts and spirits. Growing up in quite a haunted house, I didn't really have a choice. But what kind of got me interested in the whole of the paranormal was UFOs and conspiracy theories and things like that. And I think when you come at it from a different angle, it allows you to have much more of an open mind as to what spirits might be or what ghosts might be. And one of the biggest, I guess it's a conspiracy theory, but one of the biggest things that have always interested me is the nature of reality, why we're here, why we perceive the world as we do, and how we perceive the world, and how everybody perceives it differently. And that's even down to people who might be colorblind, who can see different colors to other people. And as I began to research the nature of reality and how we perceive the world and why the world is like it is, that's when I began to go on paranormal investigations. And I started off by going with some of the bigger groups, and we'll talk about that when I move on to the entertainment industry. But as I was kind of going on these investigations and getting used to the equipment that people were using, I began to put together the research that I'd done into the nature of reality and my interest in that. And I began to try and link it with the paranormal and what the paranormal is. And it led me down a path really. And I'm one of those that think, I'm not going to make the evidence fit my theory. I will always bend my theory to fit the evidence. And what I tried to do was to link the nature of reality to the paranormal. I didn't try to force it though. And one thing I just want to share with you guys is this. So hopefully you can see that now. I don't know how clear it's going to be if you've got it on full screen or what, but what it shows is the electromagnetic spectrum. And at the top and at the bottom, it shows the light spectrum. And if you can see just that little rainbow area where it says visible light, that is what we can see as humans. So these biological vessels that we inhabit, that is all that we can see. And that equates to roughly, some say less, some say more, that equates to roughly 0.05% of the light spectrum. And that's a very small amount, I'm sure you'll agree. And what that means is in the space that we're now in, whether you be sat at home watching this, whether you're just listening on your phone, wherever you are, that means there's roughly 99.95% of the space that is around us we cannot see, we cannot interact with. So the more I began to look into this, the more I began to question, well, is it possible that spirits, and not just spirits, but other paranormal entities are existing within this 99.95% of the world that we cannot perceive. Now, don't want to get too deep into it, but my research then took me down to the possibility of us living in a holographic world where everything is pure frequency. And if everything is frequency, then it can be manipulated, it can be changed, it can be adjusted in order to make you see, or to enable you to see what you can't normally see. And the analogy I use for that is radio. So if we're listening to a show on Radio 1, for example, that doesn't mean that Radio 2 isn't existing. What that does mean is that you're only tuned in to Radio 1. So if we take the radio here and replace that with brain, it means we're only tuning in to Radio 1. Everything else is still there, we're just not tuning into it. Now, if you change the dial and you tune it into Radio 2, you can now hear Radio 2. Radio 1 you can no longer hear, but it's still there. It's there, it's accessible if you knew how to tune into it. So if you keep changing the dial, you get your different frequencies. Now, I'm sure you've all had it where you've been in a car and your two radio stations have, just had a bit of a fault and you can hear both stations at the same time, and then it fixes itself and it goes back to normal. What I pose as a question is it possible that when that happens, it's what's happening when we see spirits or UFOs or even a Bigfoot or a cryptid or any paranormal entity? Is it possible that what's going on is our frequency range has adjusted ever so slightly and we are now tuning in to things that we wouldn't normally be able to see? We wouldn't normally be able to see that spirit. We wouldn't normally be able to see Bigfoot. But for some reason, our frequency range has changed. There's a fault within the matrix, I guess you could call it. And all of a sudden, you can see what you wouldn't normally see. That tells you that it is always there. It's always occupying this space around us. So if we lived in a block of flats, we occupy one floor in the frequency range that we're existing, and that would be the visible light that you can see there on that diagram. We live on one floor. Above us, we might have spirits. Below us, we might have interdimensional beings, aliens. Top floor, you might have cryptids, so your Bigfoot or your, your Mothman, things like that. And we're all existing in a block of flats. And you know that we're all there because you can hear the people above you. You might hear them scraping the furniture around. You might catch a glimpse of them every now and then as you're crossing paths in the elevator. But ultimately, you can't really interact with them because they're all on different levels. And that's really what's going on here. We're all on different levels of frequency. And ancient cultures talk about being able to inhabit higher or lower levels of frequency. Heaven is higher, hell is lower. I would say that is just a personalization of higher and lower frequency ranges where we are all existing. And I believe that once we leave this biological vessel that restrains us into only seeing that 0.05% of the light spectrum, once we leave this biological vessel, we are now free to operate on any frequency that we wish. And we're now free to move between all frequencies as opposed to being just locked in to that little spectrum there that you can see on that diagram. So really, that's the angle that I come from when I investigate the paranormal. And as I say, it opens up a whole world of possibilities. It means that all paranormal activity and all paranormal entities are one and the same. It means they are all operating on frequencies. It means that ghosts are potentially related to UFOs, if you can accept that UFOs are interdimensional. It means that UFOs are related to Bigfoot. And so many times I've come across witnesses who have seen a Bigfoot or a cryptid creature within the same area as a UFO sighting has recently been seen. And it tells me that is an area where these frequencies can interact quite freely. And if you go there, you might be able to, change your frequency range and tune into a different radio station, shall we say. So I just wanted to kind of go through that and just lay a platform really for my own personal research. And I know that there's several people watching who have alluded to there is much more to the paranormal than just ghosts and spirits. And hopefully I've helped people understand a bit there that is possible if we come at it from this angle, that we are living in a holographic universe and we are all just operating on multiple frequencies. So I can just see people commenting. So thank you guys for joining in. This is fantastic. Hopefully you're enjoying it, and you will enjoy it for the next 50 minutes or so. Plus the full day of activities that we've got going on today. I think it's really, really great. So we're just going to move on now to the next part of my presentation. So now I'm going to move on to the entertainment industry versus the research industry. Now this is quite a controversial topic, and it's had it's kind of, I guess, allowed me to have quite a few hot debates, shall we say, with several people. So I alluded earlier at the start to when I first got into ghost investigating, I would go with several groups, and there are 3 or 4 really big franchises, you would call them now, around the UK. Most Haunted are one of them. They do the Most Haunted experiences, and there's several others which I won't name because people tuning in will no doubt know who they are. And these are the people that I went with. And the good thing about them is it's not all bad. The good thing is that they allow accessibility. They're doing events all around the country, at any place you could imagine, every weekend, and you can go along with your friends. The equipment's provided for you, and you can have a good night. It allows you to get into places you wouldn't normally be able to afford if you were an individual investigator, but we'll come on to that in a short while. So when I started going with these groups, one thing that quickly became apparent to me was money. And I know that's quite a harsh thing to say, but ultimately that's what it is. People will run these groups, and people will run these TV shows. And in my opinion, I've now dubbed it the entertainment industry. And these are people that, whilst I believe they do have honest intentions, or they start out with honest intentions, I think what happened was they become, I guess, compromised. And the reason for this is money, and the reason for this is popularity and TV ratings, if they're a TV show in particular. If you are a big franchise running events every weekend, you begin to rely on repeat business. You begin to rely on the money. Some people make a very good living out of this. And in my opinion, the very second that you start to focus more on the entertainment side and the money and the ratings and repeat business, you compromise yourself, and you are no longer a researcher. So the other side of this is the research industry that I talk about. In my opinion, you compromise yourself, and you are no longer a valid paranormal investigator, because what happens is ratings drop. If ratings drop, they lose their job. Their show gets cancelled. So they're forced to fake things. And there will be people watching this who might love Most Haunted. I mean, one of my favourite programmes is My Ghost Story, that you can see at the bottom there, because it does show real evidence. But, it's fine to watch these things if you understand that they're entertainment only. And some of these shows actually tell you that at the start. This is for entertainment purposes only. And people need to understand that, because it's not going to give you an accurate representation of paranormal investigating. And one of the reasons I wrote my book was because, and I started all of this giving presentations, was because I was getting really irritated with people turning up to investigations expecting what I've called the Most Haunted effect, where someone is possessed within the first 5 minutes. Glasses are thrown off the shelf within the next 10 minutes. We've actually had people at investigations leave after half hour because they're bored, because their attention isn't being held, because nobody's being possessed. And that's the Most Haunted effect. If you live in America, maybe it's the Ghost Hunters effect, And I think that has really had a negative impact. To give it a positive spin, it is responsible for getting people into it. These big franchised groups, these TV shows, it certainly got me interested when I was a young kid. I remember sitting down and watching Most Haunted with the family. But then as you begin to traverse down the more research side of things, you can't help but notice the negativity that these shows and these big franchises bring. To put a different spin on it, to talk more about the franchises, these people are creating a monopoly on the paranormal investigative world. They are taking certain locations and basically making it their own. And it prevents smaller groups like myself and Karen and everyone really that's participating today, it makes it really difficult for us to get into certain locations because the money has skyrocketed, absolutely skyrocketed, because they know they can get it from these groups. And these groups can pay it because they know they're going to get repeat business. They charge a lot of money. I've been to locations with my team, and what we've paid has been half the price of what some of these bigger franchises will charge you as a paying customer. But people pay it, and that's fine if you understand what you're going for. You will go, you will probably have a medium there that will point you around the investigation and tell you what to feel, how to feel, where to look, what you might see. And what they're doing is they're subconsciously implanting these experiences in your head because they have to ensure that you have a good time. Just like the TV shows have to ensure that you enjoy the episode that you're watching, because if you don't, you won't tune in next week. And if you don't tune in next week, that's another viewer lost. And the more viewers they lose, the ratings go down, and they begin to lose their popularity and their job, essentially. So I'm just changing a slide there. It's just a little graphic, really, just some money and TV ratings there. And what happens is these franchises are the same, really, but obviously they're not on telly, so they don't rely on TV ratings. They rely on repeat business. So they need to ensure that you're having a good time. So they'll have a medium telling you what to feel. They'll kind of push things into your mind. And I've experienced this firsthand. And if anyone's watching this, if you've experienced this, please comment. I'll read it out. And if anyone has an opposing opinion to me, again, please let me know. But they will ensure you have a good time, and they have to, because if you don't, you're going to go onto TripAdvisor or Facebook, you're going to leave a bad review, you're going to be bored because you've gone expecting the Most Haunted effect. You're not going to go back and pay your £70-80 some of these events cost. You're not going to go back and pay that money anymore. And if you don't do that, they lose out. They're out of pocket. They can't put these events. They can't afford these big venues. And to give an example of the I guess the monetization that's happening here. I got married in a little house in the Black Country. It's in the middle of a park. Hayden Hill House, it's called. It's a Victorian house. And when we turned up to have a look around to book the wedding, I inquired as to could we have, a ghost hunt here. And she looked a bit taken aback. She was, oh no, we don't do that kind of thing. That's not really for us. You're asking the wrong place. And I said, okay, fine, fair enough. I respect that. About 3 weeks after my honeymoon, so it's not long after, I turned the telly on to find Most Haunted were doing an investigation at Hayden Hill House. And obviously this would have had to have been recorded a long time previous. So it would have already happened, no doubt, when I went and inquired about doing ghost hunt there. And it just goes to show that these people are just throwing money because they can afford to at these locations. And who's to blame these locations for not turning it down? But what it does is it prevents us from being able to go out. Someone's just made a comment here, and it's an absolutely fantastic comment. Jessica Bailey Smith, we join on events as it allows us access to the location we can't afford to hire out on our own. An absolutely brilliant comment, very observational, and you're right. They've kind of got us by the balls, so to speak. The only way that some of us can go and investigate these locations are by paying, the £50 or £60 or whatever to go with these groups, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get into these locations. But it's important to remember that the reason we can't get into these locations is because they're charging so much money, and they're charging so much money because these franchised groups and Most Haunted and these TV shows are chucking so much money at them. And it's important to remember that. It's kind of like a catch-22. So thank you for that, Jessica. Very, very good point. However, what I quickly found was there is a different side to this, and that is the research industry. And the research industry is where I will place myself, and it's where I know a lot of people watching this now, and I know it's where a lot of people participating in this weekend will place themselves, and that is in the research park. And what that means is you're not in it for the money. You will pay out of your own pocket to go and investigate these places. You're not in it for the popularity. You're not in it for the TV ratings. You're in it because you want to prove your own research. You want to prove that the evidence is out there to back up your own beliefs. Or maybe you're skeptical and you want to try and change your mind. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're doing it from an honest and true intention. And I believe that the people that originally started out in these TV shows, in these franchise groups, they all do it. They all do it with honest intentions. But what happens is that they become compromised, as I've mentioned. And the second that that happens, they no longer fit into the research industry, in my opinion. They now move over to the entertainment side of things. And it's a shame. It is a shame. And that's not to say that everything is faked. That's not to say if you go on one of these nights, you won't have a great night, because you will. And I've had some good evidence gathered when I've gone with these groups. And people might say, "Oh, a bit hypocritical for going to these groups if you're not happy with them." Well, as Jessica pointed out there, the only way we can get into some of these locations is as a group to go and pay. And ironically, we're kind of feeding the beast, but it can't be helped if you want to go and investigate a good location. Just throwing a comment again up here for Tasha Brown. I agree, and a few of them prompt you to experience certain things. As a newbie, I prefer to experience whatever may be there and present itself to me. I don't like to be told I should be experiencing certain things. Tasha, fantastic point. However, that is what happens. And I'll talk a bit more about this towards the end of the presentation. But in my opinion, the investigative field has to start going down a new route. It has to start going down a more personal route. And we'll touch on that in the next section where I begin to talk about modern technology and traditional investigative experiments. So I'm just going to have a drink because I've been talking for a long time. So once again, thank you for joining in. Thank you for choosing to watch my presentation. Whether you're watching it live or whether you're going to watch it at a later date, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to start talking about modern technology and the traditional ways of doing things. So what I mean by this is as years have gone on, people have developed new ways of experimenting, new ways of investigating the paranormal. And that's great. It means that we can progress as a field. It means that we can begin to gather more evidence. It means that we can begin to maybe build better case studies for what it is that we all believe. Or let's be honest, we all want the same thing. We all want to prove that spirits exist when we're out investigating. And you might have a skeptical person, a skeptical friend that's with you while you're investigating. And it doesn't matter what you do, a ghost could walk up and slap him in the face, and he still won't believe that spirits exist. But what we need to do is get away from really trying to prove to these people, and we need to start experiencing it more from a personal level, which I'll touch on a bit later. So this technology that I talk about, mainly it comes through mobile apps. So if you're watching America, that'll be cell phone apps. And these are freely available from any app store, whether that be Samsung or iPhone. And most of them are free, or you can pick them up for about £1. And we have a wide range of these apps that are all existing now. So we have things such as spirit boxes. I'm sure we all know what they are. We have ghost radars. We have ghost detectors, as you can see there. And they're all free, most of them. And it's good. It's a good thing. It allows people to have a play and carry out a ghost investigation at home, maybe, without going out and paying the expensive costs of doing an investigation. However, it does have a lot of negatives. And I recently went on a paranormal investigation with another group, paid my money, thought I'd support a local group. It was a good night. But what I noticed was every single person that I interacted with on the night, at some point or another, had their head stuck in their phone. Now, one thing I've always encouraged people to do at an investigation is to turn the phone off, or at least put it on flight mode. For once in your day, just step away from the technology, step away from the distractions, step away from the EMF that is bombarding your body, which we'll touch on a little bit in a second, and just focus on the atmosphere of where you're investigating. Focus on the room, focus on the energy. More importantly, focus on yourself, because you are probably the most important investigative tool that you have in your kit bag. But what I found were people were literally sat with their heads staring at these screens. Now, personally, that is also just a little off-putting, because you're going to be sat in a dark room and all you can see out of the corner of your eye isn't shadows, it isn't spirits, it's the glow and the illumination from everybody's mobile phone screens while they're participating with these apps. Now, what these apps tend to do, if you're familiar with them, again, please leave a comment. This is an interactive presentation for those watching. I welcome comments, I welcome questions. Just chuck them on below the video, and I'll do my best to answer them or to bring them up on the screen. What these apps tend to do is they tend to shout. You might be able to turn your sound up, and as you can see on the picture there on the right hand side, we have the word deceit. Now, some apps you can only read them, some apps it will read it out for you. And again, that's quite off-putting if you're trying to focus on the energy and the atmosphere of a room, particularly when you have 3 or 4 people using these apps and you have these robotic voices being shouted out left, right, and centre. And it's supposedly a spirit interacting with the app, saying a word, and these apps are throwing these words out there. And what's interesting is I always come at these investigations from a psychological point of view. I guess I am quite skeptical. In fact, the more I do this, the more I surprise myself at how skeptical I actually am. That's not to say I haven't had experiences, but I believe you have to approach it from a skeptical point of view. If you approach an investigation with the mindset that ghosts are real, then you'll prove that ghosts are real, because any sound that you hear, any shadow that you see will be a ghost. It doesn't matter about investigating any further. It's a ghost. It's backed up your beliefs. That's great. If you come at it with a bit more of a skeptical angle, then it allows you to investigate a bit further. What was that shadow? Was it a car driving past? What was that voice? Did someone cough? Was it someone's stomach rumbling? You don't just jump to the fact that, oh, it's a ghost, ghosts are real. You just dig a little bit deeper and try and disprove that it was a ghost before you can finally say, maybe, just maybe, it is paranormal activity. So these apps, they supposedly interact with spirits. I'll just go back a bit so you can see the different apps as well. They supposedly interact with spirits and show what spirits are saying, or they can tune into the frequencies of the spirit boxes that you can download. Now, a spirit box scans frequencies, live frequencies, so it is quite an accurate piece of equipment. If you've got a physical spirit box, a physical radio scanner, if you've got it on your phone, who's to say that it isn't just pre-programmed words, pre-programmed sounds that are constantly scanning patterns, essentially? If you've got enough time, maybe you could sit and see if you can figure out a pattern, but who has time for that? And in my opinion, these apps are very, very easily manipulated. To give an example, on the investigation that I recently went on, people were using these apps. They were using something similar to the one you can see there on the right-hand side. And what I noticed were when we were talking, when we were calling out, the app was picking up your sound. It had a little sound wave at the bottom, and it was listening to what you were saying, essentially. So I think it is possible. I have friends that build apps. I know it's possible for an app to listen to what you're saying and to then spit out a word that is closely related to a topic that you're discussing. If you're asking for a name, it will spit out a name. If you're asking, are you a boy or a girl, it will give out maybe a female or a male name. This is possible. But what's even easier than that, because that's quite a tricky piece of coding, what's even easier than that is to just have random words thrown out at random intervals, whether that be written on the screen or spoken out by the robotic voice. That is so easy to have an app do. And interestingly, when we were at this investigation, these apps, what I noticed over the period of the night, because as I say, people were using them all night, what I noticed was the same words would come out every now and then. One of them was over there or over here, and that would happen quite regularly. And most of the time, it had absolutely nothing to do with what we were asking. If we were saying, where are you? And it answered that, then fine. That's absolutely fine. But it wasn't. It was absolutely nothing to do with what we were asking. It would just spit out a random word. Now, from the psychological point of view, which I come at this from, and which interests me the most, what was interesting with this was people would just stop what they were doing. The course of questioning that they were going down, the path that they were going down with their little calling out, their little séance, they would stop that immediately because this app had told them a particular word, so over here, for example, they would stop what they were doing and change their course of questioning because an app on the phone has told them that a spirit supposedly is over here, wherever that is. So they would change their course of questioning and go down a completely different route. They would give it 10 minutes, other words would be thrown out. You might get a name, you might get a feeling like shameful, you can see on the screen there. And what I found interesting was come the end of the experiment, come the end of that little session, the people using these apps would have completely developed a whole scenario, a whole story based around the 3 or 4 or 5 words that they'd had thrown out on their apps. And they developed a whole backstory to what this spirit, who this spirit was, how they were feeling, where they were in the room, and they developed all of this simply by an app throwing out random words. Are they to be trusted? In my opinion, no. There's much more better pieces of equipment that we can be using. Are they good? They're handy. You can download them for free. You can have a laugh with your friends. You could do something at home. It's a gateway, really, into investigating. It's a gateway into equipment. Most equipment does cost a lot of money, unfortunately, and people will download this because it's quick and easy. However, we shouldn't really be allowing this to dictate our paranormal investigations. We shouldn't really be having our heads buried in our mobile phones, because what mobile phones do is they affect EMF. They will affect your K2 meter. They will affect your REM pod. They will affect your walkie-talkies potentially. All of this is having a negative effect on other equipment that you might be using. It's also having an effect on you. If you're staring at a bright white light, doesn't matter how much you dim the screen, if you're staring at that for a long period of time in a dark room, it's going to affect your eyes. It's going to affect what you see. It's also going to affect the perception of your surroundings because EMF is bombarding your brain, and that has a negative impact on how we perceive the world, going back to what I spoke about at the start, and I'll touch on it again towards the end. Another piece of modern equipment that I've noticed people using a lot is this. Now, people might recognize this. This is Stickman, and it is from Xbox. It's from a gaming console, and I think it's the Xbox Kinect. I'm a PlayStation man, so I don't know much about the Xbox. But this is the Xbox Kinect. Again, thank you for tuning in. Please throw some comments or questions into the section. Happy to bring them up. That'd be great. I will go back and touch on some comments that I maybe haven't seen from before a little later. So this is Stickman, and this works from the camera that the Xbox Kinect uses. And the reason that paranormal investigators are using this is because there was a wide range of reports from Xbox users who were using the Kinect who would claim that it kept trying to choose player 2. Player 2 kept connecting while they were playing the game. And they would obviously know that there wasn't a player 2. They were in the room on their own. Who is it that's that the Kinect is picking up? Is it picking up someone that isn't there? So Ghost Hunters jumped on this opportunity and thought, fantastic, we can use this for paranormal investigations, because if it's picking up on something that isn't there, this could help us. And that's a good thing. Going back to my theory at the start, we use a wide range of equipment now that allows us to see outside of the 0.05% of the light spectrum, visible light. We have ultraviolet torches. Ultraviolet torches allow us to see just to the left of the spectrum. We have infrared cameras that allow us to see outside of our range. And that's really good, because with the human eyes, we can't see these kind of things. If you shine an ultraviolet torch, you might see shadows that you wouldn't normally see with your own eyes. Just don't shine it in the kitchen, because it will show you how dirty your kitchen is. And believe me, your wife or your partner will not be happy that you've highlighted that. So just a word of warning there. Just keep an ultraviolet torch for paranormal investigating. Word of warning. So we have these pieces of equipment that do kind of allow us to see outside of our spectrum, and that can only be a good thing. That is fantastic. Same with the Stickman. However, my experience with the Stickman is it's very, very faulty. And the fact that we had such a wide range of Xbox reports, Xbox users reporting it as faulty, that was what they did. It wasn't, this is a spirit, it was, this is faulty, it needs repairing. Xbox picked it up as a big repair. And they can't, in my opinion, every single reported use or every single reported repair that needed happening on someone's Connect box. That can't have all been paranormal. There must be a fault lying within that piece of technology. And what's frustrating really is the paranormal investigators have just taken that piece of equipment, haven't really modified it at all, haven't looked at what that fault could have been. They now just use it religiously on investigations. And religiously, when it picks up a spirit, it is a spirit. They don't question it. They don't try and debunk it really. It's, well, Stickman has picked up another person in the room, so it's a spirit. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where we can't really rely on that, really. We need to dig a little bit deeper. Tasha Brown, thank you for commenting again. Your body is the best device you can use. Absolutely. I'm going to come back to that in a little while. Thank you for throwing that out there. So if I just kind of wrap up the modern technology side, again, throw your comments in if you're happy with what I'm saying. If you disagree with what I'm saying, I'm happy to read that out. So modern technology, I've just wrapped up a few pros and cons here. So most mobile apps are free or very cheap compared to physical devices. If you were to buy a spirit box, you're talking about £80-90. That's a lot of money for some people, particularly when you're paying so much money to go on these investigations. Not a lot of people can spare that. So to be able to download an app for £1 or for free from a mobile app store is very tempting, and I can see why people do it. It brings more people into the field with easy to access equipment. Again, it's free, it's cheap to download, it's on your phone, it's there whenever you need it. It is accessible, I get that. It brings a sense of unity to a group, so multiple people can become involved and have shared experiences. So touching on what Tasha said there, it is your own body really, and it is a personal experience, which we'll come back to. But what this allows us to do is to gather around a device. It allows us to all see that spirit shouting out the word over here. It allows us all to experience that spirit if you're watching a ghost radar, where it supposedly tells you where a spirit is in the room, like a radar screen. It allows us all to see that at the same time. And that's a good thing, I guess. It brings the group together. Is it right? Probably not. However, these pieces of equipment, these apps, they can be easily falsified and manipulated, as I've discussed. The apps can very, very easily be manipulated to just throw out random words, and people believe these words, unfortunately. And they can't fully be trusted for obvious reasons that we've discussed. So I'm going to move on to traditional now. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the traditional side of things. I'm just going to have a quick drink again. So as you can see there, we have a picture of a spirit board or a Ouija board. We have some dowsing rods. We have a mirror, which would be used for scrying. It doesn't just have to be a mirror. You can scry using smoke from a fire, or a crystal ball is the most classical version of scrying. And this is more traditional. So you'll notice really there's no batteries involved. There's no electric. There's no EMF being bombarded around. This is more the body. This is more personal. And this has its downsides too. I'm just going to change slides just to show a little picture. That's a séance. So again, it's traditional. It's the way it's always been done. There's no technology involved. It's relying on your own perceptions and your own experiences. However, this does have its downsides, and we'll touch on some of them later. But just for now, when you're doing spirit boards or when you're doing dowsing rods, particularly, it can be your own body that's subconsciously moving these. If you really want to believe in a spirit, you will force these pieces of equipment to act as such to prove your beliefs. We've had people come on investigations who have been so dead against believing in spirits that it doesn't matter what anything's telling them, it doesn't matter what any pieces of equipment is doing, they're just not going to believe it. That's a very bad way of approaching paranormal investigating. However, an equally bad way is the complete other end of the spectrum, where you are so determined to believe that the paranormal is real that any piece of evidence, any shadow, any noise, any move on the dowsing rods, any move of the glass on the board is a spirit. Straight away, oh, that's a spirit. That's unbelievable. Spirits are real. And that's just as bad, really, in my opinion, than the people that approach it with nothing's real, it's all fake. You have to be somewhere in the middle, and that's obvious to me, because being somewhere in the middle allows you to be open-minded, but it also means you're going to question what you're finding, and debunk everything, and eventually what you're left with might just be paranormal. So there is a more traditional way of doing things that doesn't rely on EMF. It doesn't rely on using mobile phones, and using apps, on using batteries, which can all be faulty and they can all be manipulated. With a spirit board, for example, I remember one of the best sessions I ever had on a spirit board was we were conducting the experiment. There were only three of us, and there was myself and another crew member and a guest. And we didn't really know who the guest was. He just turned up on the night. And the glass was moving, and the guest said, "I think this is my dad." So, being the skeptic that I am, I asked him to remove his hand. So, there was only me and the other crew member participating. However, I did ask the guest, keep asking questions. If this is your dad, keep talking. So, he continued to ask questions. He continued to say, "What street did I grow up on? What's the name of my mum? What's the name of my oldest son?" And me and the other crew member answered every single question accurately. And I can't explain that. If we're not talking about a spirit using us to move the glass, then we're talking about some kind of telekinesis, some kind of telepathy, where that guy is implanting the thoughts into our head, the answers into our head, or he's somehow making us move the glass. That's really, really interesting to me, because that's not faulty. That's not a faulty battery. That's not outside influence from EMF. That's not a mobile phone that's been downloaded that is fake, that is manipulated to give false answers. That's just two guys who are accurately answering questions from a guy who isn't touching the glass. He's nowhere near the glass, but we're answering every question right. And that always sticks out to me as a fantastic example as to how the traditional methods are more personal, and they can be trusted, not fully, of course, but can be trusted much, much more than using mobile apps and this modern technology that we seem to be relying on so much these days. The investigations I've been on lately, as I say, I just can't get over the amount of times people will just have their heads buried in their phone, listening to these apps, and why, I don't know. It's very rare now, if I go with another group, it's very rare that we just get to sit in silence, and we just get to sit and listen to the atmosphere, tune into the energy of the building or the location where we are. And it's only when you really do that you begin to notice things happening. So yeah, Tasha, yeah, that was amazing. It was a fantastic experience. Plenty more I could tell you, but we don't have time today, unfortunately. So yeah, that's the traditional. And again, I've just kind of weighed up some pros and cons there. So traditional pros, it's cheap to do. So doing a séance, calling out, as I say, sitting in a dark room, tuning into the building, tuning into the energy that's around you. It's cheap. It's practically free, unless you've paid to go on an investigation. You could do it anywhere. It is free. It is a more personal experience. I know Tasha touched on this earlier. It is a more personal experience because you're experiencing it with your body. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. However, it can be manipulated by certain individuals, and I've witnessed this again myself. When you're doing a spirit board, it isn't just you doing it. There are other people touching the glass. And these people could, if they are manipulative, if they've come to have a laugh, if they've come to disrespect it really, then they can mess around and move the glass, and that might leave you thinking you've interacted with spirits when really it was just a random guy having a laugh and going home knowing he's kind of jeopardized the whole investigation. If that helps him sleep better at night, fine. And I know people that do it. I've experienced it myself. The other thing that it is a con really is it allows the subconscious to play a part. And we'll touch on that in a minute or two. There are so many things at play, external factors, that really do kind of influence you and aren't anything to do with the paranormal. It's all about the subconscious. However, if you allow me to talk about the theory I mentioned at the start again, if we are living in a holographic reality, then potentially we are creating our own reality. And everything that we experience on a daily basis is nothing more than our subconscious acting out and playing out our life. So maybe the paranormal is a manifestation of our own beliefs. And if I can just sidetrack, I think I've got time. A theory that I've been looking into lately is that every single paranormal activity that happens around the world is linked. And this goes back to the theory again, where it's all frequency. If we were to strip away the universe, whether it be holographic or not, and we get down to the coding of the universe, so you're looking at numbers on a screen, so to speak, is it possible that every single paranormal experience that happens, so again, you could see a Bigfoot, you could see a UFO, you could see a ghost, you could see the Virgin Mary at the foot of your bed, all of these things that are happening, is it possible that when you strip away the universe, it's all the very same code? We are all experiencing the same paranormal manifestation. However, what's interesting is if you're religious, for example, you will always see a religious figure. So, it's very, very rare that, in fact, if you've heard of it, let me know, but it's not that often that someone who is completely atheist or agnostic will witness the Virgin Mary or Jesus Christ at the foot of their bed or walking through their room. If you believe in ghosts, really believe in ghosts, then you will see ghosts. If you believe in UFOs, you will see UFOs. If you believe in Bigfoot, you will see Bigfoot. And what I think is happening is we are actually encountering paranormal situations, or we're tuning into different frequencies that are surrounding us. And that is paranormal because it's outside of our normal. But what we're doing is we're pushing our own beliefs and we are manifesting this paranormal coding of the universe. We are manifesting our own beliefs onto it. Want to see the Virgin Mary? There she is. Do you want to see Bigfoot? There he is. And we're manifesting it because we're creating our own, our own reality. So we're going to see what we want to see. What we put out is what we get back. So it's a slight deviation there, but just something for you guys to think on. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, before we move on, I know Tasha's just left another comment. Thanks for interacting, Tasha. It's great. This is really strange to kind of be sat in my living room, not really being able to make eye contact with everyone. So I do appreciate people leaving comments. Tasha says that she likes to go on investigations and she doesn't like to know anything before she goes. Again, good point. So many times we subconsciously plant information into our head, and using a Ouija board or a human pendulum, we might answer questions that we already know. She says that she likes to use technology, but you can go in blind to begin with. Technology can help, and I'm going to touch on that in my next slide. Before I do, I was on an investigation once with a friend, and I'd spent the whole day playing with him subconsciously. I kept repeating the name Emma, talking about friends at school called Emma, saying, "Do you think she looks like an Emma?" as we were walking around Gloucester at the time. And what was interesting is on the night we did a spirit handwriting session, automatic handwriting, and I went over to him about 5 minutes in, and lo and behold, he had written the name Emma. And it was very squiggly because he was blindfolded and he was using his weak hand, but you could tell it was Emma. And I thought that was brilliant. And he was blown away. He thought, wow, why have I written Emma? Until I pointed out to him, look, mate, all day I've been telling you the word Emma. And when he realised that, he thought, wow, you've had me there. And it goes to show the power of suggestion, the power of the subconscious, that you don't really know what's going on. So thanks for that, Tasha. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left, so moving on. So a happy medium. So there are modern pieces of equipment that are good, that do enable us to interact with spirits potentially, that can't really be as manipulated as mobile phones. So I've just listed some here. As you can see, we've got the laser grid pen, which is great. So it just allows you to see shadows more easily. Nothing bad in that. However, if you're staring at a laser pen for a prolonged period of time, it will have a negative impact on your perception. Of course it will. You're staring at a laser for 10 minutes. So again, there's pros and cons to every piece of equipment. In the middle there at the top, we have the infrared camera, the thermo imaging camera. Fantastic piece of equipment. Shows anywhere that's hot or giving off heat, essentially, as red. So that is allowing us to see into the infrared spectrum. So if you go back to that slide I showed right at the start, how we can only see a small portion visible light. and just outside that is infrared. And this piece of equipment allows us to see that. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. We've had it where we're pointing at a chair and the chair is red hot, as if somebody's sitting in it. We've come back 10 minutes later and it's cooled down. It's now showing as a green or a blue. So it's almost like something was sat there, now it's moved. And this camera allows you to see that. With the human eyes seeing the 0.05% of the world, we wouldn't have seen that. So it's a good piece of equipment. The EVP recorder, probably one of the first pieces of equipment in any investigator's tool bag. Really good piece of equipment. Again, picks up certain decibels that we wouldn't hear with our human ears. And everyone is a little bit more deaf or can hear a little bit more than everyone else. I've spent most of my life behind a drum kit, so my ears aren't really the best. So I tend to pick up quite low frequencies quite well, but I can't really pick up high frequencies. And an interesting point of view with this was we were doing an investigation, and I was in a separate room at the time, and we heard a growl. It was very animalistic. It was very evil on the face of it. And when we went into the room next door where the other team were, they were carrying out an EVP session, and they'd picked up the word hello. And we ran the timings, and it was the same time that they'd picked up hello was the same time that we had heard the growl. So to go back to the theory again, is it possible that with the human ears, we were decoding a frequency as a growl? And that's essentially what I'm doing to you now. I am barking at you. You know, a bunch of vibrational frequencies are coming out of my mouth, just barking. It's just vibration. It hits your ears and you decode it into the language that you can hear, so you can understand what I'm saying. When we heard this growl, is it possible that we were hearing it on a frequency that we couldn't quite tune into? So we were just hearing a noise. However, the EVP recorder could hear on a different frequency level, and it picked up the word hello, and it was quite friendly, it was quite gentle. To hear it as a growl, it was horrible. But when you actually heard the hello, it's quite friendly. So it goes to show the perception of the reality that we are in. We have equipment that allows us to tune into frequencies that as a human, we just can't. And there's so many more examples I could give of where that is the case. We have a REM pod there at the bottom left, probably a bit more trustworthy than an EMF meter, a K2 meter. Because a K2 meter can be influenced by mobile phones, by plugs, by faulty fuse boxes, by exposed wires. Whereas a REM pod, it generates its own electromagnetic field, like a pheromone. And if you go near it, it makes a noise. So it shows that if something is interacting with that EMF field, it will kick off. And that's a bit more trustworthy than a K2 meter that can be influenced by mobile phones or by faulty fuse boxes, as I say. If someone tells you their phone is on flight mode and they're holding a K2 meter and it's going mad, just make sure that their phone is on flight mode, because they might be lying. And of course, there, bottom right, we have a spirit box. And that's a physical spirit box, nothing on the phone, no app. So we know that is physically scanning radio frequencies. And that's interesting. It's not manipulated. It's not pre-programmed sounds. If you tune it into a particular frequency that's your favorite radio station, you will hear your radio station. So you know it's accurate and you know it can be trusted. However, as I say here, there are external influences that can impact any piece of equipment that you use. So at the top there, we have melatonin. So melatonin is a chemical that was released into your bloodstream by your pineal gland, and more spiritual people will call that your third eye. And what happens is sunlight represses your pineal gland, and therefore it prevents melatonin being put out into your bloodstream. The less melatonin in your bloodstream, the more awake you are. So if you're in a room where sunlight is flooding in the morning, you'll wake up naturally because the melatonin is no longer in your body, and that's what regulates your sleep-wake cycle. However, what's been found through various studies that you could find online, I don't really have time to go into it, but you can find it yourself. What's been found is that electromagnetic fields and the EMF can have a huge negative impact on the melatonin levels in your body. So what happens is it has the same impact on the pineal gland than sunlight. So it represses your pineal gland and prevents you from being able to sleep. So people will go to bed with mobile phones charging next to them. They'll fall asleep while on their phone or on their tablet. They'll have TVs on while they're going to sleep. All of this has a really negative impact on you. We're being bombarded with Wi-Fi now, 4G, 5G. It's having a negative impact on the human body. and in my opinion is having a negative impact on what we can perceive in the world, and how we perceive these different frequencies. So melatonin is an interesting thing, and I would encourage anyone to really just unplug from electrics as best as they can. There are so many stories of people who thought their houses were haunted because they were having sleep paralysis, or people pushing on their chest. They were seeing shadows in the corner of their room, and when they actually had their electrics fixed in the house, bang, the house was no longer haunted. They weren't having these experiences. So something to think about there. I've listed there the ideometer phenomena. So medical definition of or relating to an unconscious or involuntary bodily movement made in response to a thought or an idea rather than to a sensory stimulus. So what that means is when you're doing the Ouija board and you think that it's a spirit moving you, it could just be your subconscious reacting to a thought or an idea and moving the glass for you, just like my friend who wrote the name Emma while doing psychic handwriting. And at the bottom, we have pareidolia. So that's the perception of apparently significant patterns or recognizable images, especially faces in random or accidental arrangements of shapes and lines. Seeing faces in the clouds, for example. Listening to a spirit box and thinking you've heard a name or a particular number that fits in with the questioning that you're asking. That's pareidolia. That's you imagining or recognizing a pattern just because it fits in with your belief system or what it is that you want to get from that particular experiment or calling out session, for example. So these are all things that we really need to think about and particularly question when we're doing paranormal investigations, because they can all have a negative impact on what we're getting, the evidence that we're getting. It's never just as straightforward as it's a ghost or a spirit. Just quickly then, so I've got about 3 minutes left now. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you for tuning in. So the future of paranormal evidence. Can we ever trust what we see or hear again? In my opinion, the short answer is no. No, we can't. So much things now with CGI, all of these manipulated pieces of equipment. In my opinion, we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to just our bodies, as Tasha alluded to earlier, and trusting our own experiences. If you can go away from an investigation, knowing what you saw, knowing what you felt or heard, that's enough for me. We don't need to prove to the world that it was real. If you can go to bed at night knowing that what you saw was real in your own mind, that's fine. If you've made it up, if you've lied, then you've got to live with that. You've got to go to bed that night knowing you've lied, and that's on you, really. But for me, we really need to get into personal experiences now. We need to move away from this technology. We need to move away from these easily manipulated mobile phone apps, and we need to just get back to basics and get back to really tuning into the atmosphere and tuning into the environment around us. That is the future of paranormal investigating, in my opinion. If anyone thinks any different, let me know. Pop a comment down, but I think that's the way we should be going. We shouldn't really be relying on technology as much as we are. That's just a picture of my book. Should anybody be interested in purchasing that? Obviously, you can get that from Amazon if you just go to Amazon and search An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation, or if you just type my name into Amazon, that comes up. If anybody would like a signed copy, please just let me know. You can email me at kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com. That's kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to post out a copy to you. That wouldn't be a problem at all. And also, as in the description of the video, I am a host of Paranormal Paradigm podcast. You can find that on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Play. Just search Paranormal Paradigm podcast. I have some great guests on there, anything to do with the paranormal. You can see there, facebook.com/the Paranormal Paradigm. Head over there and I'll add you to the group. We have some good discussions. And also I'm the host of the Collective Conspiracy Show, which is part of the Keep On Chatting page, which Karen is very, very kind enough to allow me to host once every couple of weeks. And that allows me to tackle more conspiracy side of things, not just paranormal. So we're going to wrap up now. We've got about 30 seconds or so. So thank you very much for joining in. This has been unique for me. It's been a first to give a lecture or a presentation like in this way. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you to Karen and the team for putting this on. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Nothing else like this really going on around the world. I think this is absolutely brilliant. Brings us all together, and that can only be a good thing. So thank you guys for that, and also thank you for allowing me to come on and give my presentation. I've really enjoyed doing it. I've really enjoyed presenting today, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you very much. Take care, and hopefully I'll speak to you all soon. Bye bye.